I want my name to be synonymous with work that made Black folks feel alive and feel what is essential about us, I think, which is wondrous and wonder, you know? And not just seen but celebrated and full and musical and danced, all of that. I want to be a witness for that.
We love a standing ovation. Thank y'all for bringing the actual energy here. And yes, Queen, congratulations.
Thank you.
2024 has kind of, I know, in the way that these whole things work, been like an unexpectedly big and varied year for you in terms of all of the different roles that you're playing this year. So I would love to just kind of ask about that idea first, that you got to have this kind of variety with the Deliverance and the Supremes at Earl's All You Can Eat, Nickel Boys, Origin. I mean, there was a lot in 2024. How do you kind of encapsulate it?
Well, first of all, thank y'all for being here. Oh my God. The thing is a lot of this stuff was shot 2 years ago, and they just happened to be coming out this year. The Deliverance, we shot that in 2022. And some other things, and Earl's All You Can Eat was shot in 2022. Nickel Boys was shot in 2022. And I think they are just coming out now, first of all, because Mr. Daniels with the Deliverance did about 20,000 reshoots. So I guess finally he said, okay, I'm done, and so that came out this year. It just happened to turn out that way, honestly. Yeah.
And because we are kind of in a room full of actors, I feel like that's the kind of thing that people maybe don't see or understand. They're like, oh my gosh, wow, Aunjanue Ellis booked 5 roles this year. Right. That is not the reality.
No, not at all. Not at all. It really is. I guess maybe starting at the end of 2021, I just started getting these offers, for a couple things here and there. And it happened before the nomination, just things. I started being in conversation with Mr. Daniels, with Lee, after he saw the Clark sisters. And so that was just a real kind of gestational thing. And then the Deliverance came out of those conversations. Yeah.
I mean, that's one of those things. In a lot of ways, one role kind of begets the other. And that's really exciting that after seeing the Clark sisters, he was like, yes, I would love for you to play an apostle doing a Deliverance.
I never thought about it like that.
Listen, it's all in the church, so I see where he's going with that.
Dr. Maddie Moss Clark is delivering demons. Yeah, that's a logical progression, I think. Yeah.
Actually, let's go back there. Let's talk about the Clark sisters, because I've heard you say that is some of the most fun you've ever had on a set. Why?
Yeah, I don't know necessarily if it's the most fun I've had on a set. It is the most fun I've ever had playing a character. Sure. I was a fan, not a fan, a stalker of the Clark sisters for years. And when I would work in Detroit, because they're from Detroit, I would try to find out where they were performing. I would go to churches where I thought they would be, and just show up and wait until they were leaving out of the church, and I remember I went up to Miss Karen and I was just like, I love you so much. And she touched my hand, you know, and like she said, look, I made your hand dazzle. So I loved them. I mean, I studied them. They were my understanding. Really, honestly, when I started thinking about how acting and music are so related, and particularly how music began to inform how I did my job, really. So when I got the letter that they wanted me for a role in it, I was like, come on, man, I'm stalking these women. Like, that doesn't happen to a stalker. You know what I mean? Like, that's the whole point. Is it makes life is supposed to be hard for a stalker.
Don't anybody take ideas from this, y'all. This is a specific story.
Right. It's supposed to be frustrating to stalk people. But you gonna give me full access? Come on. Yeah.
Well, actually, tell me about that idea that it informed that correlation between music and what you do as an actor. What does that look like now, a few years later, as you were preparing for some of these recent roles?
Yeah, well, I cannot honestly overstate that I have what informs me and how I build character, how I think about the language of what I'm doing. Music is essential to that. As a matter of fact, now it's foundational. Because a lot of it, I'm sure if there are actors in the room, and I know there are actors in the room, that so much of what you do is about breath, right? Where you breathe, where you choose to inhale, where you choose to exhale. And music is what music is. Music is about rhythm. Music is about silences and where there is sound and where there is silence. And I try to have an understanding of that in the texts of what I do. And that, character work can inform the other one, or it can be vice versa. But how I think about text musically is the first place that I start.
What did that look like for, since we're talking about the Deliverance, why don't I ask about that for Reverend Bernice? Where did you start with her?
Well, I was working with a man who is actually an apostle. His name is Apostle Louis Dickens, and he does deliverances that's what he does. And he practices mainly in West Africa, in Ghana. So Lee hired him to be my consultant, and he essentially trained me to appear like I knew what I was doing, in being this apostle. So a lot of what I did with him was really, first of all, understanding that this is a religious profession, is delivering demons out of people. I didn't come from that experience. I come from the Baptist experience, and that is very, very different. We don't do that. We don't do that. We don't do that. We believe in the devil for sure, but we don't do demon deliverances on Sunday morning. We don't do that. So I didn't have an understanding of it. Also, I didn't speak in tongues naturally at all. So I had a talk with him, and I said to him, I am, Baptist raised, and I don't take this. And I had a grandfather who pastored 4 different churches. My family is very, very rooted in their religious experience. It is foundational for them. I don't take this lightly. I not only want to be believable, but I also want to honor my grandmother in what I'm doing. you know? So, and my mother and my aunt and my uncles, like I want to do that. So I don't want to play. I don't want to play. So I have to find something in this that speaks to me so I can feel like I'm honest when I'm doing this. And so what I had to do is make that make sense for me. And the way that I did that is I said, okay, here is a family that is going through hell because there is a demon in their home, right? And I try to look at that as how does that, what is the correlation between that very specific experience and a Black woman's experience in America, right? And so I looked at that demon as a colonizer. And how do you purge a colonizer? You know, this thing was taking over her life. You know, and we all know what that's like. We all know that it can be gentrification, right? It can be feeling like you don't have as much control over your children because you are your parental practice is being questioned by the world, because that happens all the time with Black women. So I thought about it in that way, and Apostle Lewis affirmed that, and we kind of arrived at that. Like this thing is not something that's just specific to this one woman. It is about being a Black woman in this country, and I wanted to get that demon out of her house. So that made sense to me. That made me feel like I wasn't pretending. Yeah.
I want to ask, I guess we're not really jumping. You know what? Let's go back. I was going to go to Nickel Boys from there, but I think I want to go all the way back because we are kind of talking about musically, because I rewatched a little bit of Ray.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
And I also had the pleasure of listening to you and Miss Regina King have a conversation a few years ago. So that what kind of man are you montage really hits different. Just in the sense of this is a set of scenes between these two women that could be played like, you know, kind of catty, that these two women are like in a cat fight over this man. Mm-hmm. And what I found so interesting about what the two of y'all were doing in that is instead of catty, it's more like maybe not even like cat and mouse. There's something that you all are doing very silently where you can like see that like the game that you're each playing. And so it really makes it feel so powerful when you finally throw the brick at that window, because it's not really about Ray in that, you know, him disrespecting Marianne, but it's also about this other woman and the fact that like I have to concede that you won the game that you two and I were getting at. I'm so curious about stepping into that whole big world and also having, you know, scenes like that with Regina and what your kind of memory is of what you were filling out with Marianne.
I think my experience of that was just being able to witness and learn from just incredible focus and actors, you know. First being Jamie. We were in the hair and makeup trailers, a bunch of us talking, and we walked out of the makeup trailer. And he didn't come out of the makeup trailer. He was just standing there, leaning there. And, you know, we didn't think anything about it. But the reason he was standing there is because he couldn't see. He couldn't see. So he needed somebody to help him out of the trailer, and we didn't know that. He was literally could not see, you know? And that was just, when I realized that, I was like, look at the commitment and devotion this man has to playing this role. I was just blown away by that. And then with Regina, when we shot the scene where, you know, we kind of go off on each other, you know what I'm saying? she was a little cold to me that day. You know what I mean? And I was like, "Hey, Regina, how you doing?" Hey. And she was just, "I'm okay. How are you?" You know? And then at the end of the day, she was like, "How's it going today? How are you?" Because she maintained that feeling during the day, as we were acting. And then when we were done, she was back to being Regina King, And that was one of my first roles ever. That was my first big movie role. So I ain't know nothing about that. It was just, I was just all new to me. I was just like, why Regina King ain't nice to me today? What did I do? But yeah, just concentration and focus and owning your space and not being an asshole, but being respectful of what you are doing and what it requires to do that. Yeah.
What, since that was one of your earliest, that was one of your first big movies, what did that role require for you? What did it look like when you were prepping back then?
It was a lot of rehearsal, a lot of rehearsal. It was my first time shooting in New Orleans, so yeah, I don't know. I really don't remember. I know it was a lot of rehearsal. And I enjoyed, doing the musical number that I did and pretending like I could sing, all of that. Yeah, I mean, I just felt like, oh, okay, I'm in another world here. This is new air for me, you know. And and then to become what it became with Jamie, winning that Oscar. Yeah.
I mean, y'all were on a ride on that one. That was also, I believe, your first Screen Actors Guild nomination with that ensemble. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
And now look where we are.
Yeah.
So yes, I will now fast forward to Nickel Boys.
Let me say this,
please.
Now, because I was trying to what was going on at that time, and I'll tell you what was happening at that time is, and I'm not trying to bring anybody down, but you're asking me. So, and what was I going through at the time? My mother had just got diagnosed with breast cancer, so I was doing a whole lot of. We shot in New Orleans. I live in Mississippi, and so I was really able to commute to work, right? So I was doing a whole lot of, my mind was, I had a double mind. I had to do the job, but I also had to go back home and make sure that she was okay. And it took a lot of focus, but I don't know how focused I was, because somebody had not said this to me yet. When you do this job, you have to treat your problems like children. So when you go to work, you turn to your problems and you say, "Problems, I'm going to work right now. So you got to stay home. And then when I come back from work, then we can play. Then I got to deal with you. But when I'm at work, I have to leave my children, also my problems, at the house." Yeah. So I didn't know that at the time.
That's also a lot easier said than done. That is a hard thing to do, but I understand your point, because it's hard to do the work of also, because you're not even being you at work. You're having to channel a whole other person, real or imagined, in that time. So it is incredibly hard to have that double mind of worrying about Aunjanue when you need to be worrying about, since we're going to talk about Nickel Boys, worrying about Hattie. You can't hold all of them in your body at once.
No, you can't. It's not that you're disregarding whatever you got going on with your family, or whatever it is that you're worried about. But it is a sort of compartmentalizing that you have to do, in order for you to really be present. And when I was a younger actor, I just did not do that. I just was I was carrying everything at once, and I think it was affecting me physically, and I just I wasn't able to show up in the way that I should. Yeah.
When do you remember turning the corner on that and being able to actually do the compartmentalization?
When that lady said that to me. When she said that to me, she was Wesley Snipes's makeup person. And I was probably being really indulgent with something I was going through at the time. And she said that to me, and it was one of the. I wish I could find her to tell her that she changed my life when she said that. Yeah, I became a better actor when I was like, oh, that's it. Yeah.
Well, because the tools were already there, the talent was already there. It just kind of sent you into another gear. I mean, it is incredible how much space that you can hold in any given performance. I feel like, the reason why we talk about this year and having all of these roles is because these are all a bunch of starring roles. Like, this is, the moment where like Aunjanue is front and center, not just, stealing a scene here and there in movies. So I want to ask you about playing Hattie in particular, because this is not only like a starring role, but it is a unique experience in working with Ramel Ross and his point of view style in which he shot Nickel Boys. What kind of stands out to you about her and what this experience required?
Well, I don't know if any of you have come to the screenings for Nickel Boys, but what Ramel is telling the story through the point of view of Elwood. So what you see when you're watching the film is what Elwood sees. So what that requires is, for me anyway, acting with the camera, directly to the camera. And it was very strange. It was very, very hard for me to do, mainly because I don't particularly like cameras that much. I've never gotten used to them. I've always felt that, I want to be doing something honest and truthful. And when a camera is here, I feel like a fraud, you know what I mean? Because it's telling you like, yo, this is not real. What you're doing is not real. And so I've never gotten used to that, and then I had to do this job and actually make friends with the camera, and it had to be I had to be intimate with this machine that up until now I felt was intrusive. So it was very hard. It was very, very hard. And hard because when you're doing scenes with a person, you really don't need the director to tell you whether it worked or not. You know what I mean? Because you can look at your scene partner, and if you feel something, if it's good, if you're cooking together, you know what I mean? You don't need that sort of affirmation. You don't need it. You just are enjoying, just thinking about scenes I did with Niecy in Origin, you know what I mean? Like, I felt like it was me and Niecy just talking, But when you're deprived of that, you're just in your head. So I had to do a lot of asking Ramel, did this work? Are you seeing what you need to see in me? And that was a new kind of trust, or a new sort of, I was activating a kind of trust that up until that point I really didn't rely on too much.
Well, I mean, and that's also hard too, because it can be very easy to get in your head about things just in general as any type of performer. So having to live in that space of being like a little insecure is definitely not easy, especially when you have this very weighty subject matter that you're dealing with on top of it. So I guess it's even better that woman gave you that piece of advice. I wonder if that, like, if you had never heard that those many years ago, if how a process like this also would have gone.
Yeah, she saved my life, honestly. You know what I mean? She really saved my life. Just me personally too, of just what I'm allowed, the bullshit that I'm allowing in my mind. You know, and that is a hindrance, not just into the work I'm making, but the kind of woman I want to be. You know? And it's just a lot of distraction. So by the time that was a long time ago, you know, but by the time I got to Nickel Boys, that wasn't at play. I really am just able to just, sometimes you have bad days. Sometimes there's only so much bifurcation you can do. You know what I mean? Like being this and being that. Like sometimes you are wholly is fucked up. You know what I mean? And that you just can't keep those things at bay. So that's just that. But on a regular day, yeah, I didn't really struggle with that. I struggled with, how do you be truthful when the measure of your truth is not there? And for me, that's another human being, looking in your eyes, right? You're nodding your head at me, saying, I get you, I understand you. And I didn't have that. I did not have that with in Nickel Boys.
I guess what would, if you kind of thinking back on the process of making that film, what maybe was your most successful day? What was the day when you did feel like, all right, we did there, I was able to bring that truth that I was hoping for in this take or in that scene?
I honestly can't say that with Nickel Boys. I really honestly, I honestly cannot. The fact that, people come up to me and they say that they are affected and moved by what I did, I'm like, really? Did you see the same thing? Really? For real? For real? I just don't have that. I never had that. I'm not gonna lie. I want to say that day, but I never had that. I will say this though. There's a scene in where I go and visit Elwood, right? And yeah, it's like something happened in the natural world as I was doing it. And, the impulse could be to ignore that and just keep playing the scene, keep playing in the scene. But I felt so present and locked in and angry and hurt by what I was had to say to my grandson. I was just like, I'm not going to pretend like I don't hear these birds, or that thing that happened. I'm not going to pretend, because if that really happened in the real world, right? And I was trying to tell somebody something that I don't want them to know, and something is loud, right? While I'm trying to tell them, it's like, why don't you honor what I'm trying to do right now? Why, I would feel that. I can't I can't do that because the sound guy needs that. Do you know what I mean? Like I have to honor what I'm feeling. I have to honor what I'm feeling right now, and prioritize that. So that was a day I felt like at least I was honest about what was going on in my body and in my head.
Well, and also I will tell you, I feel like, I know I appreciate, and I think everybody here appreciates, knowing that sometimes even when the outside world is like, oh my gosh, that was so amazing, you aren't having the same process with it either. That you aren't, it is, I don't know, I feel like a lot of us feel as if when people, and it's not that you're not receiving the compliment, I want to be clear, but that you're like, okay, I guess. Like, I think that that's really healthy.
To have some skepticism about it. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's like I appreciate the compliment. Also, like if y'all knew what actually went into that day, you may see it the way I see it, because you can't really separate the real of what happened from then what somebody saw on the screen.
Yeah, I struggle with that. I struggle with that. I really, really struggle with that because I wonder what do you believe? What do you believe? The good and the bad. What do you believe? And yes, you follow your own counsel. Now that ultimately should be who you listen to and whatever God is to you, whatever that is to you. That's what you should listen to. But I don't, whatever I'm doing, I'm not doing it in isolation. I'm doing it for the world, and I want it to have impact. And because if it doesn't, then I'm not doing right by those children at the Dozier School who were brutalized. Like, that's who I'm ultimately serving. So I have to do my job so people will care about what happened to them. So yeah, you go, what, how do you know if someone is lying to you? You know what I mean? Like, how do you know if someone is lying to you or overly complimenting you or, just want to be nice to you or, how do you know? How do you know that? And what do you hear if somebody's saying something terrible? Like what do you allow to come in and enter? And that is something that that I'm always trying to figure out. Just because I'm trying to do something that I want people to feel affected by.
Well, tell me about that idea of how you choose your roles when you are approached with something and have the potential, the opportunity to do it. What is the kind of deciding factors for you as you have built this incredible filmography?
Yeah, as I have said many times, there are not a lot of scripts that are on the side of my bed, that I'm like, I don't want to do that. Maybe I'll do this. It's not my life at all. I've just been very fortunate in the last few years where, these directors who I dig, have reached out to me and said, I want to do something with you, and I've just been very lucky. And it's just been, who knows if that'll continue, but that has been the story of the last few years. I can tell you what I don't want to do. Okay. I can tell you that. What I am exhausted with and have actually turned down a job recently because it was a story that centered men, and I'll be honest with you, most of them do. But it was three very strong women that were in it, but they were skinny in terms of their presence in the story, right? And I communicated to the writer. I said, your writing is unbelievable. Like, it's some of the best writing, most inspired writing I've ever read. But this character that you want me to play is not there. It's just not there. And the playwright wanted me to commit to it before he said, well, I'm going to make it better. But he wanted me to commit to it before he made those changes. And I said, you're asking me to commit to something that's going to take a lot of my time, and I don't know what it is, and I don't feel that you are committed to making it be what I feel like a woman like that deserves to be in this story. So I said, I can't do it. And it was all the things I wanted, Angelique. It was the writer. It was the director. It was going to be on Broadway. It was like all of those things. But I said, no. I said, no, I can't. At some point, you just got to say no. And it's not because I had a better job. Yes, ma'am, right? It's not because I had a better job. I don't have no job. You know what I mean? But it's like, I don't want to do that. Here's the other problem is that all of the dudes in the play are fully realized, right? They're revelatory, they're expressive, right? You know, it's like all the words is from here to here, you know, and they're what they gotta say. And it's not so much I wanted more to say, I just wanted to show up and be present and be consequential. Do you know what I mean? And I'm tired of begging people to do that. I'm tired of that. And so that's what I don't want to do. That's what I don't want to do.
And it's one of those things that people will do that because they know you can make it work, you can bring it, but you shouldn't have to. And that's why relationships with people like Ava DuVernay are important, and they're consequential. Started for y'all with When They See Us. Tell me a little bit and also Ethan as well, a little Nickel Boys reunion. Tell me a little bit about working on that project and what you found both as an actor, but then also in finding a collaborator with someone like Ava.
I love that you use the word collaborator. I love that. Yeah, I wrote a list a few years ago. And it said, these are the things that will never happen in my life. Okay. I'll never work with Ava DuVernay. I'll never, I don't know, name it something. I'll never, it was like 10 things on the list. And that was number one. I'll never work with Ava DuVernay, and I swear to you, months later, she reached out and wanted to have a conversation with me about When They See Us. And, When They See Us was a cast of thousands, you know what I mean? So she even says she barely remembers me, from that. And it's fine. It was so many people. And we were in the middle of New York. God bless her. I mean, hey.
She had a lot to juggle, but the Emmys remembered you, so that was important.
Thank you. No, I was like, really? But anyway, so when Origin came around, thank you. I had heard that she got the rights to secured the rights to cast the book by Isabel Wilkerson. So it was just another one of those things. I wish I could be in that. I just wish. God, Lord, why can't I do that? This is how my mind works. I'm just saying. So, yeah, and anyway, I had a fighter and an agent in Andrea Nelson Meigs, and she said, have you heard of this book? And I said, yeah, I heard about it. And she said, well, Ava has adapted it, and it's going to be in film, and she's starting to look at people now. When she told me this, she was pretty far in the process of choosing, right? And so, and I had kind of gotten word that I wouldn't write for it. So I was like, okay, bet. So I looked at Ms. Wilkerson, and I took the picture of Ms. Wilkerson, and I gave it to my sister. I said, Sasha, that's my sister. I said, Sasha, do you think I could look like this? And she said, yes. So she ordered me, Ms. Wilkerson has a sort of like an iconic dress that she wears. It's this sheath burgundy dress that she wears. And so we ordered that dress or a similar dress from Nordstrom's. And my sister ordered me some a pearl necklace, because that's what Miss Wilkerson wears. She always wears pearls. And I went to the local wig store in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. and got me a wig. Come on, got me a wig that was, Isabel Wilkerson like, and we took a picture in my sister's house in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, and I sent it to my folks, and they sent it to Aisha Coley, and she passed it on to Ava, and in a few days they reached out to me, and they said, "Well, what is this? What is this about?" And I was like, we were like, this is how I can look like her. And then I met with her, and we met, we talked a long time, but I didn't get the sense that I had the job or not. So I went home and I did 1,000 tapes, and because I felt like I had to prove it to her, that I could do this. But anyway, she saved me and called me and told me that, I had the job, but it was something I fought for. When somebody tells you they don't see it, you got to make them see it. And that's what I felt like I had to do.
Well, you certainly did. You certainly did make everybody see it. And I remember when I saw that film for the first time, and one of the scenes that obviously I'm sure you've probably talked about a million times is that close-up that Ava has you do as Isabel is working herself back up to go into this party after she has suffered these, incredible losses in her life. And it's just this amazing range of emotions that we watch you go through as she's just psyching herself up to be back there and to be truly back in the world.
Yeah, right.
What was the preparation for a scene like that? What did that scene take?
I think it was just being really informed, emotionally informed. This woman lost her best friend and her cousin, lost her husband and her mother in almost a span of a year, and then she has to go to a party and meet, publishing executives, talk about compartmentalizing. Because sometimes, you got to leave the babies at home with the problems at home, but you got to psych yourself up in order to be able to show up and be kind to the people that you work with. And so I got that. I understood that. So I just thought about all of that stuff. And it was just really, it was masking. I was putting on a mask. That's what it was, and all the things that you got to go through in order to put that mask on, all the feelings that you have to allow yourself to feel, the grief, the anger, the pain, the disillusion, the rage, the aloneness, and then the door opens. So the mask has to come on before you walk through it. Yeah.
Now, that, of course, was a scene that touched me. But what was the kind of, when you think about origin for you, what is that part of making that movie that really kind of resonates still with Aunjanue?
I think what resonates with me was how I was able to use my experience of that film to be fluent, to understand how to be fluent about race and class, and understanding that race and class are essentially symptoms of caste. Right. And the experience of that film has, gave me that education. So now I can talk about it. Now I can talk about the thing that happens and the things that continually and perpetually happen in this country with another kind of well to choose from, that I did not have before. I don't always read the books that of the adaptations that I'm a part of. I've done quite a bit. I don't always read them because, I feel adaptations and scripts are very, very different things. If they are successful, you don't go like, well, the book didn't do that, and the book is blah. The adaptation is a completely different art form. But this, I had to do that because I was performing as a scholar, and I'm not a scholar, right? I'm not that. So that book became my Bible. I carried that book around with me everywhere, even after the film was done. I carried that book with me, and it is such a tremendous, the fulfillment for me, the fulfillment of it was now I can be someone who I feel is a soldier for what Ms. Wilkerson was trying to get this country to see and understand.
I mean, to that, we've talked about this a bit. Your work is also an extension of your activism, your agitation, especially in, you've done so much in your home state in Mississippi. So before we talk about where you are in that moment, I actually wanted to go back because I didn't realize somehow that the Help shot in Mississippi, that you were in your home state making that film. What was that experience like of bringing these characters to life in your essentially backyard?
Yeah, that was crazy. That was another thing that I was like, we don't see you in this, and I was like, okay, I gotta show you. I have to show you. So that was a little story in that, but mainly, actually, then getting the role. And the actual doing of it. There's a scene where we are on the bus waiting to come out, and we're about to meet Octavian. I'm there with Viola, and so some of the background artists were saying to me that the police officers that were playing the people playing the police that were about to beat me up, that these dudes were actually involved in similar things that happened with their families. But see, that's the nature of Mississippi, though. That's the nature of Mississippi. I don't think people fully understand that where I live, my neighbors, my people I go to the drugstore with, the people I go to the gym with, they're my age and younger, but their grandfathers and their fathers participated in bombings and killings and burning down churches. Their fathers and granddaddies and grandmamas did that, right? And they go to school with my niece and nephew. I went to school with them, with their heirs. And nothing has happened to those folks. They are going on about their lives. And my classmates whose grandfathers and fathers participated in those bombings and burnings, their lives are not affected at all. They looked at me straight in my face, like, hand me a pistol, Aunjanue. You know what I mean? Like it's like it's nothing. It's like it's nothing. So that is the nature of a life in Mississippi, and that's all over the South. Where there has been no justice for no justice. So it just continues through the unaffected lives of their heirs and their children. But yeah, so crazy stuff like that happened. Doing the Help. I know that, Viola Davis has said that she regrets doing the Help. I don't regret doing the Help. I don't regret doing that for a few different reasons. What I think is the lesson of the Help, and sometimes you got to do a thing in order for you to get the lesson. I think the lesson of the help is the problem is not the fact that it was the story focused and centered domestic workers in the South, because domestic workers in Mississippi were formed and organized the freedom rights movement in this country. So that's not the problem. The problem is that it was written and directed by white people. And we have to tell those stories. We have to own those stories.
It speaks to something that I know you've said about Ramel Ross, again, the director of Nickel Boys, and the first film that he made, which was Hale County This Evening, this documentary that really captures the South in a different way.
Yeah.
What was it when you watched his film that you recognized about his perspective?
Well, one is this was the perspective of a Black person.
I mean, first that part.
yeah, and then it matters. It makes a difference. He talks about all the time, like, imagine of all the images, historic images that we have seen of Black Americans in this country. Imagine if those photos were taken by someone that loved them. Like, what would those photos look like? And so what Ramel did in shooting Hale County, he didn't just go to Hale County and shoot some people. He went to Alabama and moved there. Like, that's where he votes, is Alabama, right? The perspective of someone who has that eye, an eye for intimacy, a caring eye, an invested one, it changes how you see somebody. It changes it. It changes it. I know a lot of Southern photography, and I study it. Photographers like Sally Mann and Bill Ferris and Walker Evans, right? And it's beautiful, right? It's beautiful because it's us, so it's beautiful. You know what I mean? But there is a sort of like detached, surgical approach to it. And if you notice that when you see a lot of that photography, you will see people hanging out outside, right? And they're just resting and sitting down, and they're outside. The reason why they're outside is because there's no air conditioning. So that's why they're outside. So these photographers were able to drive by and see Black people outside because they don't have money to be inside. Do you know what I mean? They couldn't do that now. It is our poverty that gave them access to us. Right? So that's fucked up. And that's what Ramel's work is a response to. That's that, and I just, whether you like Nickel Boys or not, I think it has value, it has importance, because he is turning that on its head.
He's quite literally bringing us inside the house and inside of the body.
Yeah, exactly. He's, first of all, you see those photos, they're never, you don't know the names of the people in them. You don't know the names. Like, no one thought, okay, if you've taken a picture of somebody all day, you don't get their names. You don't know who they are. And in the photography, the history of photography, Southern photography that focused Black folks, right? Where we are the subjects. You never know their names. You never know their names. They spent all that time with them and didn't say, what's your name? And there's a photographer named Bernard Lee. He's an Asian man, right? But he was a contemporary of Walker Evans. And I was reading about his work, and he was talking the way that he talked about his subjects. He was talking about a little boy he saw. He was saying, yeah, I just thought the musculature of this boy was so interesting, and his this and his that. And everything he referred to was something that was physical. It was like he was talking about a dog, not a human being. Not a human being. So what Ramel has done, first of all, is, it started with Colson Whitehead doing that. But the way that he has chosen to do it, first of all, what he is not continuing the tradition of anybody being an observer of these folks, because that's what those photographers did. They were observers, detached observers. What he is saying is, I'm putting you in it. I want you to feel everything those boys felt. I want you to feel it, and he has rescued us from being the experience of seeing that story. He has rescued us from just being passive. Yeah.
And I'm trying to figure out where, because what you said is so powerful, because as an actor, you can never really be passive. It's really on us as it's really more of an issue with us as the audience. We are not always active participants in the work that you're doing. So I do want to talk to you about that process of embodying, because you have done that so much when it comes to embodying real people. I mean, everybody you play is a real person, but embodying people who are living and can give you their opinion about how you are embodying them. Or in the case of Exhibiting Forgiveness, for example, where you're playing your director's mother, or a version of her. How do you, with each one of those various portrayals, how do you start?
I start with trying to get as informed as I can be, like I talked about with Isabel, trying to have as much emotional information that I have, or I forgot who I was talking about, but yeah.
We can talk about any of them. Joyce was one of the ones that I thought of first with Exhibiting.
Yeah. Well, that's particularly challenging because you're playing the director's mama in front of them. You know what I mean? That, listen, I like, hey, you're like, am I doing this right? And he knows because it's his mama. But yeah, I have done that, more than a couple of times where I'm playing real people, and sometimes the real people are there, or their children are there. And that can be, I don't know, it can sometimes be stifling. It can sometimes be stifling. I was doing the Clark sisters, and one of Dr. Maddie's children, which is the world famous Clark sisters, one of them was there, and she didn't want me to do something because she felt like Miss Dr. Maddie didn't do that, but I know she did do it. I know she did do it. It was just hard for her to see it, So I honored her wish and didn't do the thing that she didn't want me to do. But, it's hard because I look at it like this. You ask me, how do I start? First of all, I say, I'm not playing a person, I'm playing a character. And it's two very different things. If you play a person, then you're getting into mimicry, or, you know what I mean? And that's not what I'm doing. I'm playing a character as if someone has imagined it. Right. That's how I approach it. And with, playing Dr. Maddie, yeah, like that was that day where it was just like, okay, I gotta honor how you feel, but you're asking me not to tell the truth here, so that can be hard. And in the case of Miss Oracene Price in King Richard, it is so necessary for you to know as much as you can about a person, because I did not know Miss Orsine was Serena's coach. I didn't know that. I didn't know that. So when I found that out, I said, okay, how did she become her coach? How did that happen? Yeah, how, yeah, exactly. What occasioned that she would become her coach? And then how did she do that? How did she do that? And then I found out that, she learned how to play tennis so she could teach her children how to play tennis. That wasn't in the script that we had. That wasn't in there. So they had these tapes of her talking, and I would listen to these tapes and hear her talk about how she was an athlete as a child, how she played softball, and they hated to see her coming because they all knew she was going to hit a home run and have to go in the woods to look for her balls as she hit, So this woman is an athlete. She's an athlete. So the information that I had in the script was incomplete. So I said, okay, what we gonna do about that? What do we do about that so we can fully tell the story, right? It is called King Richard, right? So I get that, right? But we have to honor this woman who is alive. And most people just think that she just sits at the tennis matches, cheering her children on, and that when she's saying things under her breath, oh, that's just a mama talking. No, she's knowing the moves because she taught them to her. She's being a coach. So yeah, when playing someone who is a real person, it is having all the research, doing all the research you can, and then also at the same time, being able to let that go in some ways and embrace the fact that this is not a real person, that I am playing Orsine Price, a character.
First of all, I've never actually heard anyone say it that way, and that is beautiful and brilliant. But I wanted to also mention what you were saying about it not being in the script. And it isn't even always, in the case of King Richard or other projects, it isn't always just because people are being lazy and not looking into it more. But you phrased it this way when it came to Miss Orsine, that public record of women is scarce. So it's also just quite literally not there. There are hundreds of interviews of Richard, talking about the Williamses, and all you really had was those recordings because nobody interviewed her. Right. Nobody talked to her.
Nobody asked. Nobody asked. Yeah. Yeah. You first start off with things, you go to the Wikipedia page, right? And she's described as a coach. And when I read that, this is how patriarchy works. Patriarchy works on both sides, right? It don't have to be a man to be patriarchal or to be a steward to patriarchy. When I read that she was a coach, I was like, oh, come on, lady. You're not the coach. You're their mother, but you're not their coach. You know what I mean?
That's what we're conditioned to think.
That is what we're conditioned to think. Oh, I feel so shame. I felt so shame when I found that out, that who she was, that the most famous tennis player in the world, this woman taught her how to do that. And we didn't know it.
But we know it now.
I hope so. Yeah. And then that the way that I was able to incorporate that information is that scene that I have with Richard. I put that in there. Yep. That I say to him, I've been carrying you, this family, on my back. This woman was working full time and teaching her children how to play tennis and sewing their clothes, doing all those things, and he's in the forefront, of course, getting all the credit for it. And her saying to him, I taught her how to do that. You take credit for it, but I taught her that. she takes tremendous pride in knowing that she taught Serena how to do that open stance, So you have to say those things. So, yeah.
Also, I love that. I love that. Okay, open stance, because yes, you popped right into being Miss Orsine again. I was like, oh. You're like, it was a couple years ago, but it ain't left yet.
That's all I know how to do. Trust me. I was the worst tennis player ever.
How does that work for you with characters? How quickly do you kind of let them go once you're done? How is that experience of putting characters on and off?
I don't have a problem with that, and I think the thing is I try to do, really honestly, the best that I can do when I'm doing it. So I don't have to think about it anymore. If I feel like if I didn't at least try everything I could to honor this character, to honor this movie, to honor the people that I've worked with, if I've done it half-assed, then I carry that. But if I feel like I have done that, I'm able to let it go. Yeah. Yeah.
Can we talk about the Supremes real quick? There's the Supremes at Earl's All You Can Eat. Honestly, one of the most just joyous times I had watching a movie this year. And a big part of that is just the sisterhood that is portrayed on that screen. Tell me a little bit about Odette and what attracted you to her initially, and what it was like being a part of that film.
Well, what attracted to me is the whole it being a sisterhood, that it gave me a chance to work with other women, and a woman director and women producers, and I just love the idea of that, and it's what I want to do. It's what I want to do more of. I can't wait to do more of that. So yeah, that was my first attraction to it. Yeah.
Well, tell me about the other women. Tell me about Sanaa and Uzo and of course Tina Mabry. The you were talking about earlier about directors who you've gotten now into contact with, and she's I think one of those geniuses that I can't wait to see what's next.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what she's gonna. Also a Mississippian. I just had to put that in there.
It always comes back in some way to Mississippi. Sorry, I feel
it's the Africa of the United States, and I'm not joking. It is, but yeah, Sanaa Lathan is a legend. She's a legend, and I have always wanted to work with her. We actually graduated from our graduate school programs at the same time. Yeah, she finished at Yale and I finished at NYU at the same year. So when we first started off, we were like auditioning for New York Undercover at the same time, and doing that whole thing. And then she went to higher heights. But yeah, so it was just tremendous for me to work with her. Just because she's freaking Sanaa Lathan. And yeah. And so yeah, I just loved it. I loved it, and I want to do it. I would love to do it more. I love to work on something else with her.
Well, let's also keep in mind she's a director as well, so I feel like we can make something happen. But that's crazy that that you knowing each other goes back to the New York Undercover days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We were auditioning to be on New York Undercover.
Sure. Let's be clear.
Yeah.
Well, what do you remember about coming out of school and starting that audition process? What did you imagine a career to be back then? What was your hope in acting?
Well, I did not have any hopes.
Let's be real.
I'll be real with you. Because, I'm going to be honest, like, I've told you this, I've said this, you know what I mean? Like, I just didn't have any designs on having, any kind of career that would have been creative at all. where I would have made money by something that came from my imagination. I just did not have that. I was the expectation of me was to go get an education and get a good job, right? Acting ain't one of those things. Writing is not one of those things. You got to have insurance. You got to be able to take care of yourself because we can't do it. So, it just wasn't present in my mind as something that I would do in the future. I worked with someone, and that someone said, you should try to continue doing this. So they recommended that I go to school, and I ended up getting into NYU. Before I got out of NYU, I got a job. And that saved me from having to graduate from school and go audition to get a job. I can tell you right now, as sure as there's that exit sign right there, if I had to graduate from school and start auditioning, I would not be sitting here talking to you. I would not, because I didn't have faith in that. I would have been like, no, this was lovely, but now I would have been teaching somewhere, and probably it wouldn't have been acting. I don't know what it would have been. I ain't no telling what would have happened with me. But I think if there is something divine, if I am supposed to be doing this in some sort of way, that is why I got that job before I graduated from school, because that led to that play I got eventually went to Broadway. And then I got something else, and then I got something else. So I didn't have to think about the reality of not having a job and trying to get a job as an actor. Yeah.
Because truly what you're saying, I mean, it is a career in the arts is one of the most uncertain things that you can attach yourself to, and it is what makes it so remarkable when it works out. Because there is no roadmap. There is no all right, you do this and you get promoted to this. It doesn't work the way other parts of the world work.
Uncertainty is a privilege that I did not have. I did not have that. I had to know, not just for myself, but for for the people in my life. I've been taking care of people since I was 17 years old, working at the movie theater, and my check was going to my family members, because I was taking care of them. I didn't have that. That was a privilege that I did not have. I didn't.
And I want to go to another one of those early roles, because we spend a lot of time talking to you about your drama and your gravitas. But I do also have to talk to you about Sister Girl in Undercover Brother. Because for some people, if Ray was not the first time they saw you, Undercover Brother might have been that first time. Tell me about also kind of, obviously that's not a role in which you are being Lucille Ball, but it is still another shade of the talent that you're giving us. What was something that you kind of learned from an early experience of being in a movie like that one?
That the straight person is important. You know what I mean? Like you got to stay in your lane here, and I was very aware that this is my lane right here. This is where I go. I was on a set with Dave Chappelle, Eddie Griffin, Gary Anthony Williams, Neil Patrick Harris, Shy McBride. I mean, they're just improvisers. That is what they do in their sleep. That is what they do, comedic geniuses. We throw genius around, but they are, right? And this was before Dave Chappelle was Dave Chappelle. And I just knew, just say your line and just be present, you ain't trying to chop it up with Dave. Come on, yeah.
You're the grounding presence.
I am the grounding presence.
And that's the thing. You're always a presence. That is the most incredible part when you look at any scene, any movie, any television show. It is truly your presence that stands out and that we are all so grateful for. I feel like we first started doing these interviews around Lovecraft Country time, right? Right. That's that second Emmy nomination. Can we talk about Hippolyta for a moment? Just tell me what she means to you. What does that experience represent for you?
What they just did. She was a little bit of a cultural hero. And I didn't realize that you're not supposed to think about those things when you're shooting something, because once again, that's distraction, right? But after it was done, it was essentially the beginning of lockdown, and there were people reaching out to me saying they wanted to do panels about that episode, where she gets the blue hair and she flies into space. But what was that episode called? What was it? Beyond or something like that, I'm sorry, Misha Green. I apologize. But it really affected a lot of Black women, particularly. They saw themselves in it. I mean, I love that it was the kind of space that Black women actors should have all of the time, right, exactly, all of the different selves that she was, a sycophant of Josephine Baker, you know what I mean, a space traveler, all of those things, and then a little African warrior, all of that stuff, the different selves of a Black woman, and just shout to Misha Green for wanting to put that on television.
I mean, I don't know if I've asked you this before or not, but I am so curious of all of those different setups. Which one was the most fun? Because that show also was just so big, and there was so much sets, and like it really was, the production value was so high, and the creativity and the imagination and the viewpoint that Misha was bringing us these stories from, that were opening people's eyes to a lot of things that they didn't know about.
Like Sundown Towns.
Correct.
Yeah.
So what?
Shout to Coleman, Alabama.
Yes.
Right now. Yeah. Go ahead.
That idea too, that people didn't know that there are still sundown towns. This is not a relic of the past.
Yeah.
Well, not to pivot from that actually important point, but did you have an era of Hippolytas in that episode that was the most enjoyable to get into?
Oh, God. I think I liked saying her being able to say, essentially confessing how she has felt alone and diminished in her marriage, even to this man who loved her so much, and cared for her and honored her, and still she felt this way, diminished and minimized by not just him, but a world that wouldn't let a woman like her be who she was, which was, an astronomer. Yes. I think that was most effective for me, and I think a lot of women that's what they responded to. They responded to that the most. Yeah, I wasn't alone in that.
Because it is a position that is so unique where, usually it's like, oh, I feel this way because, I'm in some way this man is mistreating me.
Right.
And it's like, no. And that was also something that was incredibly impactful about that was, we open with seeing just how loving this marriage is. And
Courtney B. Van. shout to Courtney B. Van.
We are in your house, sir. Here at the SAG-AFTRA Foundation.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that was something that was also so incredible about this, is the idea that like this is a loving marriage and family, but still, like you said earlier, the patriarchy just won't let us have it as women and as Black women in particular. So yeah, a lot of people did feel very, and I think not just in that role, have felt very seen by many of your roles. And I don't know if we've already talked about this, but it feels like that has been something that has been important for you when you do say yes to these projects.
Yeah, it is. And I'm just, but like I said earlier, I've worked with directors and, writer directors that was important to them as well. That they were interested and driven by something, a full presence of a Black woman on screen. Like they're interested and fascinated by that as well. I saw this somebody wrote this, and I wish I could credit it because it's not me who said it, but there's a cultural lack of curiosity about the lives of Black women, and yeah, it's true. It's true. Yeah, I was working with people, and I'm hoping that I will continue to work with people, and that people is me, that, has to write that into existence. I want to tell you something. So Supremes, right? Supremes was very successful. It was the most watched Fox Searchlight film on a streaming service, particularly Hulu. Right? Apparently, and I'm saying apparently because I want to, be as honest as I can be, that without the numbers, that it got so many more, Hulu got so many more subscribers because of Supremes. Like, people wanted to see the film, and as a result, it got so many more subscribers. That is a quantitative evidence of how Black women can bring viewers to a movie. Right? That is a metric that we can, like, look at that number. This makes us viable. So you might want to invest in stories about us and by us and put them on, because you make money when you do. Right? Here's the thing. One of my co-stars went and talked to some of them people and about that, and she said, well, why don't people know this? Why aren't you spreading the word? And they said, we don't do that. We don't do that. But here's the thing. I'm sorry. No disrespect to any white people that are in the house. I'm sorry, sir. If it was, name a action star. Who? Yeah, right. That would be blasted everywhere. Now, it's not the same, right? It's on a smaller scale, but they would be bragging about that. Tom Cruise, number one, They would just give us all the numbers, But somehow you got this little movie that did that thing, and ain't nobody talking about it, and don't nobody know about it. Why is that? Yeah. So people need to know that.
Because they do say that. They will tell us that when it is, like you said, white people. So yeah, thank you for sharing that information that is now on the internet, that we all can now point to, quite literally, to speak about the success of these things, because I do think that is important. It is important for us to champion the idea that you've had, and not to, well, actually now, sorry, this is your career retrospective. I am going to make it about you. But the idea that this has been a big year for you needs to be kind of shouted from the rooftops. Even though it is coincidental, it's a reminder that your work is not only valued, but it's also valuable.
That's right. That's right. That's right. That's right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And you know, I think about it, you know, not just for me, but I think about it for Sanaa Lathan and all of those young women who were in that, all those young women who were in that film, you know, that it is important for the world to know what that little film did, you know, and that there is like I said, like there is numeric proof of its success, and we should know that. Here's the thing, that the converse of that does not happen with our white contemporaries. It just does not happen. You know, you will see some of the same faces over and over and over again of my white contemporaries. I'm not trashing them. I'm just saying that is the reality. But no one asks, well, how did their movie do? You know, did people watch it? You know, no one asked that question. You know, it just was. It's like, well, she's gonna be in another one. And you look, and there she is, in another one, in another one, in another one. You know, they don't have to prove their viability. They don't have to prove it, but it is assumed, unfortunately, because they're white. You know, yeah, that is a practice that you know we have to disrupt in some sort of way. Yeah. Oh, I thank you.
Well, can we speak on one more woman who is also has a legacy of agitating, of being an activist, and that is your fellow Mississippian, Fannie Lou Hamer. I ask you about her because I know that she has been someone who has been very important to you. You've starred in a short film portraying her. What is it about a story like Fannie's and the legacy she leaves that you know, what did it mean for you to step into her shoes and maybe to do it again in the future?
Yeah, she's just a great character. She's a great character, you know. She's just a great character. She's someone that Toni Morrison would have written. You know what I mean? She's in that way. So outside of how she changed the course of our political practice in this country, which is absolutely why we should know who she is. But you ain't got to see a movie for that. Sure. You know what I mean? You ain't got to. Yeah, you can look that up. But I want to say something about that. The reality is that because of book banning, because of how they are surgically removing women like figures like Fannie Lou Hamer, Ella Baker, you can name 20 right now, from curriculums all around the South, and saying, you know, slavery wasn't so bad, because that there is an intention of doing that redaction, then where we gonna find it out? My thinking is it's the cinema. Yep, absolutely. Is that Sharon Lawrence? How you doing? I'm here to see you. Oh, that's nice. Thank you. Yeah, so we gotta find. Here's the thing, y'all know what hush harbors are, right? Hush harbors were places where during slavery, where black folks went to be by themselves and create. So we have to do that now. We have to create these hush harbors, you know. We have to do that work in hush harbor, within a hush harbor practice, but we can't keep it to ourselves. But we got to do that in cinema, in music, in all of those places. We got to do it with that intention and that zeal, because there is a force, there's an effort to destroy it in the rest of the world. So yeah, Fanny, Mrs. Hamer is one of those people. But also the other side of that is that she is just this incredible character in the same way that Setha was in Beloved, the same way Sula is, the same way Celie is in The Color Purple. That is who Mrs. Hamer is. I just figured that out. Thank you. Sure. So, yes, thank you. Like that is why she is so, for me, necessary to be on screen. I did a short that was directed by Christine Swanson, and it's on YouTube. Y'all can go see it. You can see it if you want. But I think she is the stuff of cinema. And yeah, I've written a script about her, and I want to see it. I want to see it happen. I want y'all to see it happen.
This is basically our equivalent of writing down, like you did, I'm never going to work with Ava. So we're writing it down with you and manifesting that it's going to happen. So as we kind of wrap this conversation and celebrate, again, all of these incredible films that you've put on screen. We didn't even talk about If Beale Street Could Talk or Justified. When you think about your career and, in 20, 30, 40, 50, however many more years we're all still here, when people think the name Aunjanue Ellis-Taylor, and let's be clear, Ellis-Taylor, what do you hope that you have left? What do you want your name and your legacy to represent?
The reason that I changed my name, I found this really. I haven't finished reading it, but Jesmyn Ward has a book called Let Us Descend, and the first sentence of it is, the first weapon I ever held was my mother's hand. And I did a speech at the critics celebration of Black excellence the other night, and my entry into talking about my mother and my grandmother was that sentence. And I changed my name because I wanted to carry the name of my weapons, my grandmother and my mother. So I love it now that sometimes people just call me Miss Taylor. I'm carrying both their names now. Nothing makes me prouder and happier than that. So in the spirit of honoring these women who were heroes in their own rights, but never talked about it, never shared their particular heroism with me, but I knew about it because it was important to other people. I want my name to be synonymous with work that made Black folks feel alive and feel what is essential about us, I think, which is wondrous and wonder, and not just seen but celebrated and full and musical and danced, all of that. I want to be a witness for that. And who knows how much longer I'll work. What I do know is that there is a deficit in terms of those opportunities that those things coming around for me to leave that legacy. So I'm glad that I have been able to do what I have done, been able to honor Miss Oracine, been able to honor Dr. Maddie. So there's a little something there, and I hope, I pray to God that I can do more. Yeah.
Well, thank you for what you have done. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your performances. So yes, on behalf of everybody that's here, everybody that's watching at home and in perpetuity because it's the internet, we just say thank you, Miss Aunjanue Ellis-Taylor, or I will say Miss Taylor. Congratulations.